I've tasted a lot of blood lately, and I'm not sure I got a full stomach yet.
Take a look. This is God.
It's insane, right? Art the Clown.
I'm something different.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to another Modern Horror Movie Talk. I'm your host, Tyler Nichols, and Andrew Hatfield is back with another one. Andrew, how you doing?
Good. Glad to be back. I was getting withdrawals.
Yeah, I know. Do you see any good movies lately?
I mean, besides the one we're talking about today, it's kind of a blur because, you and I do so much for the channel that I'm constantly watching stuff, and some of it's stuff I've seen, some of it's, repeats, but nothing's jumping out other than today's movie, which I've thought a lot about since I watched it, actually.
Yeah. We'll get into that. But so then last week I said something of how we would have someone from the movie on. It was supposed to be Samantha Lockwood, as she's an actress that appears in the movie in the very beginning. But scheduling conflicts ended up happening. We were hoping to be able to coordinate it, but this was just all over the place kind of thing right now. Even Andrew, you're a replacement guest, so thank you so much for hopping on and helping me out with this, because everyone's life is crazy right now, apparently.
Oh, my friends get tired of me bothering them with all my movie talk, so I'm actually happy to come on your show to talk movies, because that's the best part of life. So I'll take it anytime you need it.
That's what I like to hear. So I got an important question for you, because I messed up last week and did not warn my guests that this is a part of the show. So what you drinking?
I've kind of gone a little hard lately. Ooh. So I needed to kind of relax a little bit. So I'm just having a New Belgium. It's called Mountain Time. It's this premium lager. So it's a very drinkable beer, but
there you go.
Yeah, it's cold, refreshing. I don't know. It's hot where you are, but summer has officially started in Colorado. It's been warm.
It is. I mean, you can already start seeing the sweat glisten on my skin. It is so hot in Michigan. We had heat advisories today. It was, I believe, 95. So I'm very much over that heat. And so because of the heat, as you can already see, I'm already like halfway through this little drink that I made, and I'm not real classy these days. This is literally just vodka and Sunkist, because I wanted something refreshing, and this is refreshing for me. I know that John prefers his more Jack Daniels on the beach style, but vodka is always just a nice drink for me. So cheers to you, and cheers to God is a bullet.
Definitely.
So before we even get into this movie, I want to talk real briefly about the very strange career of Nick Cassavetes. Because I was very fortunate enough to be able to see this movie about a month and a half ago. And even when it was broached of like, oh, you want to watch this movie? I was like, oh yeah, I'm a Nick Cassavetes fan. And then I realized, I'm like, oh yeah. Oh, I think I even had set in the email to the PR person, like, oh yeah, big fan, blah, blah, blah. And then I looked at his work and I'm like, am I a big fan of Nick Cassavetes? Because maybe I just liked him as the guy from Face Off, because he's done like The Notebook and John Q, and I don't even know what else.
My Sister's Keeper and The Other Woman. He's worked with Cameron Diaz like a silly amount. But he's a Gina Gershon's brother, right? In Face Off.
Yes.
Yeah. He's actually a likable bad guy in that, for as brief as he is.
Very likable. I had the false impression that I liked his movies as a director because of how likable he is in that movie. So I would say he is. I mean, he's doing something right there. But there's nothing in this filmography that really screams that he is capable of doing a 8mm style film. However, I'm sure that some people would say the same about Joel Schumacher, who made 8mm. So it's like I understand the trepidation with it, but I will just say Cassavetes really brings it here because this is a gritty and very in your face kind of just. It's a dark movie. It's a very dark movie.
Well, and it's funny. I'm sure Lance will give me crap later, but I know you guys talked about Alpha Dog in the last time you guys were on. I actually enjoyed that movie, and I think that's a dark and mean movie, and it kind of makes sense. This is much darker and much meaner, but you can see where he got it from Alpha Dog, and this is. I mean, there are scenes in this movie where I was just like, oh, okay, that happened. And they kind of let him off the leash here. I also, I heard Cassavetes and I was like, oh, like John Cassavetes, the old actor. And sure enough, that this is his son. This is, his parents are John Cassavetes and Gina Rollins. So very famous indie, writer, actor, director combo. So he's got a pedigree there too. And then you look at the weird romantic comedy movies he has and you're like, that doesn't fit, but okay. Notebook will go down in history. Everyone loves that movie, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll tell you right now, never seen The Notebook. It's always been one of those films. I've always said that if I ever had a girlfriend that was like, we need to watch this, then I would do it. I wouldn't care, whatever. But I've never had that. I've never had a girlfriend. No, I've never had a girl actually be like, we need to watch The Notebook. So I'd never have cared to. That's the only reason I watched like Les Mis. That's, you know what I mean? There's just certain movies where I'm like, I'll watch that if a girl forces me to. So
Gerard Butler, Phantom of the Opera was that for me. Had no interest in it. And then I got dragged there. I too have never seen The Notebook. So, but
I know it's visually is like, because I know the scene in the rain it looks very well done. So I'm like, okay. Cassavetes knows what he's doing with that. Sure. But the melodramatic style of these Nicholas Sparks movies are not my thing in any way whatsoever. Melodrama is one of my biggest pet peeves in anything. I can't deal with it in movies. For some reason, I can deal with it a little less or a little more so in TV. I think it's because I can just like equate it to being like a soap opera. But a movie, I guess I just have higher standards for it. I'm like, the melodrama just doesn't work for me as much. So then there are moments in this movie where it does feel like he's trying to get that melodrama, those tug at the heartstrings moments, but it feels like it's mostly being done to kind of counteract and like mess with the audience's expectations. I feel kind of give you a little bit of like thinking it's going to go a certain way, because there's not many moments of reprieve in this film. It's pretty much constant, just bad shit happening.
Yeah. There's not a lot of good feelings for any of the characters in this movie. Even after some things are resolved, it's going to be a lifetime of trauma, essentially. Yeah, it's definitely. Well, and I don't know how frequent I could watch it.
Yeah, I won't be revisiting this movie. Maybe ever. I might watch it again. I mean, who knows? But I should say that the performances in this movie are what really just it puts it to another level for me, because there's some like, I don't know, trashiness that happens throughout the film, and a little like, CGI blood, just some moments that kind of bring it down. But the performances are just so phenomenal that I kind of was able to forgive a lot of that stuff, because I'm just constantly watching Micah Monroe and Jamie Lannister. I wish I could say his name.
I was hoping you were able to, because I was just going to call him Jamie Lannister as well. But
Nikolaj.
And I will say I mostly agree with you as we get into it more. But there was a couple lines and parts of performances that I did not care for at all. Overall. And then there's some things that I would be like, oh, this is, the delivery on this isn't great. And then the next scene would be just ridiculously powerful. Mm-hmm. And so I'd forget about that. But there was definitely some things where I was like, either that wasn't written very well, or you didn't bring it to life very well.
Well, and I will say too, when I say the good performances, That's pretty much exclusively Micah and Nikolaj, because I've always hated January Jones. Hate's a strong word, but I'm a Mad Men watcher. So Betty Draper is the most just nails on chalkboard kind of characters in existence. I've never had her be able to break that facade for me. So maybe she's great. Maybe she's wonderful. I just haven't seen it because I just do not like her. And this movie just kind of cements that dislike.
Yeah, I think she's mostly the same character in every movie. Or maybe she's just January Jones in every movie. It's not a character. But yeah, I'm on board with that. She's not my favorite. And I will say even Micah was a couple of the lines, especially early on. I was just like, okay, you're laying it on a little thick here. And then, I'll save Jamie's, and I'm just going to call him Jamie, just a heads up, but I'll save the male leads stuff till we get past spoilers, because spoilers are going to happen real early in this movie. Yeah. Because I would recommend not knowing much about this movie when you watch it. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, it's definitely a film that you want to go in knowing as pretty much as little as possible. There's some stuff that, because it's like I haven't seen the trailer, so it's one of those things where I feel like I'll talk on this show where I'm like, oh yeah, it's just like the Renfield in Renfield. I had no idea that they showed apparently they showed the recreations in some of the trailers. I had no idea because I stay away from trailers. Lance finally let me know, where I'm like, well, son of a bitch. And that's why I tried to stay away from trailers, because otherwise that moment wouldn't have affected me as big. So I wouldn't have enjoyed the movie as much, which to me is a big no. Just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like one thing that, before we get into any more spoilers, because there's just a lot in this movie that we would need to talk about that then spoils it. So before that, though, Jamie Foxx is really great as what even is he, a spotted alopecia man? Like, yeah,
missing an arm.
Is he missing both arms?
No, just the one arm.
Just the one.
He's missing his left arm. And yeah, he creates fake identities for people. He's a tattoo artist.
I wanted to follow him. His life and his story is something where I'm like, I feel like this is a movie right here.
Like, how did he get to where he is? And because he doesn't really believe in the central cult.
It seems to be more something that he can just make a buck off of.
Yeah. And I will say, one of the weaker, I love the cult idea. We've talked about this before. You give me a cult setting, and especially, as a parent, a kid getting taken, I'm all in. But the cult leader, to me, he didn't give that charismatic, Jim Jones, people follow you. And he wasn't super intimidating. All of his small group of efficient killer guys seemed way more intimidating than he did too. So he was kind of a letdown.
Ethan Suplee was terrifying. All I could think was like, I do not want to come across him ever. That man will just strangle me with his bare hands.
Yes. Because he's still as big as he was, but he's turned all of the fat into muscle. So he's still giant. He's just muscle giant now.
Yeah, and he's got this big old beard, and he's great in this as the hired or right hand man.
Yeah, he was second in command. I liked his tattoo work, I think, the best of the placements and stuff like that. Yeah, he was definitely one of the better ones. But yeah, Jamie Foxx, and he shows up only, God, his screen time it can't be that long.
Yeah, 10, 15 minutes, maybe.
If that, and it's impactful. And especially everything that's going on with the mystery of Jamie Foxx's health from recently too. It's random that he shows up in this, and he's just as good as he's always been.
And the makeup job on the alopecia is just phenomenal.
It looks really natural.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just I've watched too many just very indie films recently, where then the makeup in the 4K era is just so obvious. Where then something like that, I was just blown away because I want
tattoo stuff too.
Yeah. That now reminds me, because his whole plan of getting the tattoos, and like, it is so stupid because it's like, dude, they can see that you just got these tattoos. Yeah, they're like bleeding.
Yeah.
And they're bad tattoo, like in terms of just like they're what I would think a cop would get. I'm like, yeah, what the fuck? What is this? I liked her like tattooing on his face.
Her mark.
That was very cool. I don't know, something about that I enjoyed, because it's like, okay, that kind of feels like you're doing something. Because that's
it had world building too. Because a character later mentions, she has his mark. Or he has her mark. Like all of the people that she has a relationship with, she gives that tattoo. And then I think you see a couple people with that tattoo. So it gives you that story that, well, she's been with them before too.
And this is probably a little bit of me liking comic books so much, but her name is Case Harden, and her like street name is Hard Case. Like, I like that. That's that kind of thing. Just I don't know. It really
even his name, Bob Hightower. Like, that sounds like either an ex-professional football player or some comic book guy.
All of these names are great looking at them. Jamie Foxx is the ferryman. Ethan Suplee is Gutter, but January Jones is my favorite. Maureen Bacon. Like, what?
Well, I think that goes back to some of the dialogue I didn't like, and that include like between the dialogue and the names, like that is someone just trying to recreate film noir from memory, like giving them that name, that style of name, or that style of dialogue.
I feel like I've been around people that are like this, where then some of the dialogue didn't bug me because I was like, it made sense. Like, yep.
Okay.
Yep. Especially like Micah and the like with some of her eccentricities in the beginning, because I kind of took that as it's her. She's just coming back from the cult, where she's like riding off that high, where it's more of like where she has to be more in your face and like has to be more bombastic to be able to get her point across to someone. And so that's kind of how I read that. That's because I do feel like she kind of settles down as the film goes up, but then I do feel like Nikolaj ramps up as the film goes on.
It could be it's based on a book, so it could be the kind of stuff that's straight from the book. And Cassavetes wrote the screenplay as well, so he's the writer and director on it. But it's stuff like that. I mean, there are things like Bubba Hotep. Almost every piece of dialogue is just taken directly from the short story, and the short story is only like 36 pages, but the entirety of the movie's dialogue is just the lines, even like the internal monologue. So
really,
some of that could have been here. Oh yeah. Spoiler, I might have a video coming up on it soon, but so it could be from the book that Cassavetes enjoyed and took stuff straight from.
But another person that I think needs to get brought up in this film that I really liked was Jonathan Tucker. That's the Errol Grey. He is the weird drug dealer guy. I don't even know how to describe him.
Yeah, he's the eccentric drug dealer. Like, he helps make money for the cult, essentially. Like, they use the drug front to get money for their guns and to bring people in and to do their sacrifices, because there is a chunk of this movie that is a little bit of a horror movie when they get to the house where a lot of the sacrifices go. They go there's parts where it gets very, very, very dark. Obviously I don't have any kids. How did you do with the I don't know, like kidnapping and child violence? Yeah, that stuff is definitely more scary to me now at 38 with 3 kids than jump scares and things like that were in my teens and 20s. Even like the main character, Bob Hightower, you can not be as upset if your ex-wife dies. Yeah, that's fine. But I didn't think at first he was as emotional as I thought he should be for his only daughter to be kidnapped. Now, granted, going full vengeance and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get her back. He did that. He nailed that. But the sadness and like just insanity that you would go through, I don't think it was quite there. But again, a lot of the stuff in the beginning was then kind of washed away performance wise by the time they got to the end.
There's definitely some stuff that as the movie goes on, like the Cyrus, the main bad guy, just didn't work for me. I think that there's a scene. I think that the scene in the trailer kind of worked for me in a way where he kills his mom, where then I was kind of able to then see the unpredictability of him. But there is still that kind of, I don't know, you can see the weakness so much. So then I feel like someone would have taken his spot. Like, why is Ethan Suplee not taking over the gang? It feels like that would be happening in this situation, but it doesn't for some reason.
Yeah, and I guess so. If we're talking spoilers, the whole movie, like, you have the central conceit, and then the reason for this starts branching out as the movie goes along, right? Mm-hmm. So you're learning more about Micah's character from the cult. Yeah. The whole, one of my favorite scenes is when she sees her mom in the supermarket or the liquor store, wherever they are. Her mom.
Yeah, her mom. Yeah, and, I love that too.
That was just such a great scene. But it unravels, and at first, like, the other cops are really encouraging, or not even encouraging, but they're not turning in Hightower for going on his vengeance crusade. And then, since we're in the spoiler section, it all comes down that, of course, and sure, maybe it's a little convenient, but it turns out that the cult and the cops were kind of working together on like a land development deal. And
yeah,
I didn't love that either. You can have crooked cops, like maybe they were paid by the cult or to turn their heads or blackmailed or something, but the fact they were all in it together, I didn't love that. Yeah. I will say one of my favorite current directors is Craig S. Zeller. Are you familiar with Dragged Across Concrete, Bone Tomahawk, and Brawl in Cell Block 99?
I know the last two.
Okay, so they're all three. The first one it's the Kurt Russell horror western. The second one is a Vince Vaughn prison one, and then the third one brings Vince Vaughn back again, and he's partnered with Mel Gibson, and they have such explosive, sudden violence. And they're all really long movies too. I think all three of them are over 2.5 hours. Mm-hmm. And this movie felt like almost an outtake of his movies, with the dark material and the sudden explosive violence and how they use the gore, and like maybe not all the characters are good per se. Very few of them are. I mean, Bone Tomahawk are mostly good people, but the other ones, they're not great people. And that, other than Hightower, who you completely understand his motivations, and even Case by the end of the movie she has her redemption.
Yeah,
which I think she's trying to get the whole time, but she has it. I also found it interesting that the cult members become stormtroopers and they can't hit them with their submachine guns. Like, when they have that.
Yeah, that kind of thing, definitely. And especially now knowing that it's based on a book where it's like, that kind of stuff can happen. And it unfortunately it's bad blocking in terms of they should make it a little less obvious of like, wait, how can they not hit them? But in terms of the sudden violence, I could not agree more, because there is an awesome part with like a shotgun where they kills these people. That scene gets so violent out of nowhere, and I loved it because I didn't think it was gonna happen. I just thought they were gonna go away. So then when it's like, oh shit, he's shooting.
There was that one, and the one that caught me off guard even more was when he shoots his own cult follower girl. He unloads about 12 rounds into her face, and it shows every single one, and he just keeps going. And that was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting her to die just because of the previous, since she helped out Case. Since like I assume that she's going to be dead, which, by the way, that girl is one of my issues with the film. She has some real rough scenes where couldn't justify that, even being a junkie, where I'm like, this does not work in any way. But that's fine. That kind of shit happens again.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. I love a dark movie like this. coming along and releasing. And I mean, I know it's releasing in very few theaters, but it is releasing in theaters. So I'm all about that because I want to see more movies like this in theaters.
Oh, it's great. It's great juxtaposition because right now in theaters you have Elemental, which these movies still might be out by the time this airs, but you have Elemental, you have Into the Spider-Verse, you have Indiana Jones coming out soon. Sure, you have Insidious, but that's much more of like
just rated PG-13.
Yes, and it's part of the machine. This is the fifth one, and it's nothing wrong. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah.
But then this comes along, and it's going to make 1.8 million, for its theatrical run, and it's going to end up on Blu-ray with a bunch of special features and maybe a slightly different edit or something, and people are going to like gravitate towards it. Yeah. It's the same way with and if you haven't seen all three of the Craig Zeller movies, I highly recommend them. But it's good to see this. This is the kind of filmmaking we still need, especially in a theatrical set.
Absolutely, and I'm curious too. Is like looking at Nick Cassavetes' filmography, where it's like, how much was him doing these other movies, him then being able to like do this movie, like, you know what I mean, in terms of doing so many favors for his studio, where it's like, how long has he been trying to make a movie like this that then people just won't make? So then he's like, well, gotta pay the bills. Guess I'll take another Nicholas Sparks and make a couple mil.
And I mean, Alpha Dog was like 2007 or 2009, so it's been 14 years since that. And if you look, he's got a bunch of upcoming credits, and none of them even have pictures or anything. So who knows how many of them are that same Nicholas Sparks style before he can do this.
Upcoming credits, especially with IMDb these days, where it's just like,
it's crapshoot.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? I always struggle with that because it's like, wait a minute. Does this person actually have something in the works, or is this just something that
they attached because IMDb heard something and you can edit it? Almost anyone can edit it.
One thing too that I did not expect them to do was that. So the little girl, her name is Gabby. That's not the actress. The actress's name is Chloe Guy, but Gabby is the character. And I was kind of shocked that after all of this, we're on this big journey, and Jamie Lannister finds his daughter, and he then immediately abandons her. Like, I get it, abandons, but like, I feel like I would not be able to do that. Of like, I'm leaving you again, which then she gets attacked by two different guys.
Yeah.
Which, like, we've talked about how scary Ethan Suplee is in this. He's one of the guys that attacks her, which then she has to kill. Like,
yeah. This is one of those movies that I think, unfortunately, and I still really like it, but it's great when you watch it, and then when you start breaking it down, you find holes in it, and you're just like, okay, there's some logic leaps, there's some poorly thought out sequences, there's some bad performances, and you're like, okay,
but I still enjoyed it.
Oh, absolutely. No, but you're right. He rescues his daughter, throws her in a pipe, gives her two loaded guns, which she may have shot before. We don't know. Her dad's a cop, so there's a high chance she maybe has at her age. But that was an interesting decision. And also for taking a flamethrower directly to the face, he looked pretty good at the end of the movie. There was definitely some scarring, but I thought he was dying in that scene, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, right when they show the aftermath, like right after, I'm like, oh, he didn't get much of anything. Okay, good for him. I guess he's fireproof.
Yeah, seriously.
But also too, that kind of stuff where I'm like, well, if that's in the book, and then you know what I mean, they're trying to represent these scenes that are in the book. That then it's such a tough. It's always a tough thing. Where then you always have to go to the director, and I guess just the production in general of like, well, could you have pulled this off in a more believable way? Was it? But also, I don't know what happened on set. It could have been like they wanted to do this, but then, you know what I mean? Like the sun was coming up, they had to get this shot, and they weren't in that location anymore. So then they had to rush some stuff. I don't know. It just, it didn't. That kind of stuff where I'm like, why isn't this thought through a little more?
Yeah, and I'm sure, I haven't looked up the budget of this movie, but I'm sure it wasn't like ridiculously high. And you run into things like that where you have to make do. And the actors, I mean, Jamie Foxx is not cheap, I'm sure. You know, Jamie Lannister is not. I can't wait for the comment section, by the way, on our use of his name. But he's made a name for himself. He even
hey, I've said his name, Nicolaj.
You said it with confidence too that time.
Yeah.
And because he's done at least one or two like straight to Netflix like gritty movies too, like after Game of Thrones.
Yeah, he's been doing a lot of interesting stuff since leaving Game of Thrones, and I think this is probably amongst the most interesting.
Well, it's funny too. Speaking of Game of Thrones, I realized that I just rewatched Overlord, that J.J. Abrams produced World War II horror flick, and 3 of those actors were in Game of Thrones as well. So they, I don't know if it was before or after. I don't remember the timeline.
It was during, because it was during that time where that's just what would happen. You would just see, it's like, oh, yep, Game of Thrones actors getting cast. Because I feel like at a certain point in Hollywood, casting directors were just like, okay, were you on Game of Thrones? Okay, perfect. We want you in our movie.
Did millions and millions of people watch you and recognize you? We're gonna get you to come into this.
Yeah, I feel like 2012 through like 2016, 17 was just like they'd pop up in everything and be like, oh, it's this guy. Oh, it's that girl. Oh, which at a certain point, practically every like British or Irish actor was, showing up in that show. So I guess that makes sense. But all right. I feel like we've covered God as a Bullet. So what do you got for your rating for this one? Because I know that I very much have struggled with my rating for this because it's just, it's a hard one to rate. So I'm going to make you rate it first because I'm the host of the show and I get second.
That's as is your right. I think, and I'm stuck between two. And I think the more I think about it, it goes down. But also, like, it does some stuff that it takes a lot for me to be taken aback in a movie. And some of the explosive violence, I was like, shit, like that was impressive. And how mean it was, how it didn't care who the characters were, what they were doing. They get injured, they get killed. So I think for what it does, and it was very entertaining. It's something that I'd recommend to some people that want to see something different. So I think, even though my gut is telling me to go a 6 because I have a lot of problems with it, I think I'm going to give it a 7 because now I've learned from watching Bunbury that we don't give 0.5s anymore. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna go a 7, even though Catch Me on a Different Day, or if we're talking about it a little more, Get Me Another Beer in Me, it might drop down to a 6.
Yeah, I would put it in a similar category where. It's like I feel like I was in a similar place last week with The Blackening, where my main thing to then shift God as a Bullet to a 7 is just how much I enjoyed the performances and how much this film stuck with me, because I made the mistake of doing a double feature of this film and Sanctuary, which is a dominatrix film with Margaret Qualley. And fantastic, one of my favorite movies of the year, but just not the kind of stuff that you want to watch back to back. So it took me probably like 2 days to shake these films, and God as a Bullet in particular, and mostly because of the kid stuff. It was the kid stuff really just I don't like that. I don't like I'm not in like a it's not, I didn't dislike it in a turn off the TV way. I just disliked it in just that guttural feeling.
It makes you feel icky.
Yeah, wasn't something that just turned me away from the film like a, I don't know, dog animal killing kind of thing would, because at least with this, I'm like, okay, this kid isn't being hurt. This, you know what I mean? When a dog gets like hurt or killed in a movie, I'm like, what'd you do to get this shot? So 7 out of 10 for God as a Bullet, I think it could go up, it could go down. I really want to see this film again because I just don't know what to expect from I don't know how people are going to react to this movie, because the film that I compare it to the most, and I've compared it several times, 8mm from Joel Schumacher. Sure. because it just has a same kind of grittiness and kind of just left the same feeling, gross, icky feeling for me. But I still loved it.
Yeah.
So
I think it has been, I haven't seen that movie in 15 years, but I think 7 is the cap for me for this movie. I feel like this can go down the more I think about it. And especially on future viewings when I know what's coming. I'll have to rewatch 8mm, although I'll never watch 8mm 2 again because that was the straight to video sequel. I mean, come on, when you work for Blockbuster, you watch everything that comes in. That's how we talked about this before. That's how I watched Boogeyman 2 and 3 when those came out. If Blockbuster is going to put it on the shelves, I might as well give it a shot because there are people that are going to come and rent it. But the first 8mm, I'm interested in going back. I do have. As much as I love crazy Nick Cage, I also have an affinity for playing it straight Nick Cage too.
I just love Nick Cage. Whatever you give me, the whole spectrum, I love it all. So, well, I think we pretty much covered God is a Bullet then. Next week on the show, we've got another streaming recommendations. Guess TBD, but it should be a fun one. I know that you guys all really enjoy that. And so, yeah, that's really it. Andrew, thank you again so much for joining me, and we will see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.